Anybody can learn astrology. You do not have to have any particular intuitive talent or anything to do this. But I would be very clear if you're going to do this.
Today on Time We Discuss, I have Susan Reynolds with me, and it's time we discuss what it's like being an astrologer. Susan, thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure. Hey, everybody. I have the best job in the whole world.
That is awesome. I'm excited to hear more about this. So let's set the stage properly initially. I know sometimes people can confuse astrology with astronomy. So let's set the stage properly. What do you do as an astrologer?
As an astrologer, when I'm working with a client, they will come to me, they will give me their birth information. This is their date of birth and their place of birth, and if they know it, their time of birth. And when I do that, I run a computer program that will create an astrology natal chart for them. And that chart is really a photograph, a picture of where the planets were when they were born. And so I look at that chart and I use my years of skill, training, understanding to interpret that for them. That's my job. I'm the interpreter to them of what is this chart saying. And sometimes I'm spot on and sometimes I'm not. And it's just very interesting to me to see how the chart reflects their life. So that's what I do. Astronomy is much more about the numbers and the science of the stars and the solar systems, where astrology is much more concerned about personal growth.
You said sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. What happens when you're doing this for someone and you are wrong? What's the typical reaction? Is it very like, I can't believe this, you don't know what you're talking about? Or is it more like, that's not quite right? What is that like?
Most of my clients are very kind, very understanding when I say something that they maybe don't connect with. It's much harder for me because, of course, I want to be right 100% of the time. And I'm human and I'm not. And so I'm like beating myself up. How could you get that so wrong? And, so I'm much harder on myself, where most of my clients understand that I'm not a machine and I'm giving an interpretation of something. So let's say you have your moon in Cancer, and Cancer rules food and nurturing and home and family. So I would say, oh, it looks like you may have a good career in terms of something to do with the home or family. Maybe you're a real estate agent. No. Do you work in food? No. Like so my energy is just going down. You're like, I'm terrible at this. But it doesn't mean that energy doesn't come out anywhere in their life, just because it may not come out in the way I talked about it. If I ask, are you a caterer and does your job involve food? The answer is no. But I actually said that to one client. She said, no. She said, but I've had an eating disorder for most of my life. So the energy was there. It just wasn't there in the way I was languaging it to my client. So most clients are very understanding about that, much more understanding than I am about it.
Okay. So you're talking about your clients, and I remember from our conversations prior to us having this conversation, you talked that you're doing this full time, which I think is really, really cool. I spoke with Joshua Chairs. He is his group does like paranormal investigations. And I spoke with this woman, Holly Faust, and she does occult research. And both of them, they talk about the paranormal or the occult world. You typically do not charge for your services. So when you told me you do this full time, I thought that was really, really cool. Because I feel like astrology is kind of like that fringe science almost. So I think it's really cool that you do it full time. So I just want to definitely set that stage for everyone listening or watching that this is a full time job for you. You do this for a living, which I think is awesome.
This is my livelihood. And the people you spoke with are typically right in that making a living in maybe the occult world or the mind, body, spirit, or new age side of life, it is incredibly challenging. And so typically, most people have a regular full-time job that pays the bills. And then they do this on the side because it feeds their spirit, it's their passion. And for many years, I worked in corporate America. I had a real job, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and I did astrology nights and weekends for fun. It was a hobby, and I never intended to ever do this full time. And then one day I went into work and my spirit guide said, "Today's the day. You need to leave. Like, you need to go do this full time." And I ended up leaving my job that day. And I had no plan, no money, no nothing. I just left my corporate job and trusted that this would work out. It is not the kind of job to take if you want to be sure of things, if you want a steady income and 2 weeks paid vacation and a good medical plan. This is not the way to do that. It is flying by the seat of your pants. But because I had already done this part time for so many years, I had clients already built in. But then I had to learn how to make this a profession. And I had to learn not the astrology part of it, I had to learn the business part of it. How do I market myself? How do I find clients? What do I charge? What kind of tax records do I need to keep? Do I need a license? These are not fun things in the mind, body, spirit community. People in the mind, body, spirit community are typically very right brains. They do not want to hear about taxes and codes and learning technology. So the business part of it was a huge challenge for me, huge. But I persevered and worked very hard and started little by little to build up a business. So now, yes, I have regular clients that I read for one-on-one and do a reading for. But I also give talks. I also teach classes. I've taught classes on intuitive development, on astrology, on chakras, on reincarnation, on all kinds of very woo-woo subjects. Sometimes, especially before COVID, I would rent a house in the mountains and take a group of people into the house for a weekend, and we would do a retreat for the weekend based on one subject, like dreams or something like that. And that was a lot of fun. I stopped doing that obviously during COVID, and I may start that again. But so little by little over the years, it's branched out to not just the one-on-one reading. I do parties. I'm a nice party trick, I'll come in and do little mini readings for everybody. And, I guess astrology is good entertainment. So it's a very fun career, but you have to love it to make it worthwhile.
So let's hang on the one-on-one meetings for a second. So when you're doing a one-on-one with someone, is that typically like for a typical client, is that like a once a week, a once a month, once a quarter? How often do you meet with that one client to have that one-on-one discussion?
It's a good question, but there's no real specific answer. It's really up to the client. Um, some clients come to me once a year. They get their regular yearly reading and they're very predictable about that. When I first started, I did not think astrology was a seasonal business, but it is because every January, everybody wants to know what's going to happen in the year ahead. So I'm packed in January. But December, people are busy with other things. They've got family and gift giving and all the holiday, craziness, and they're not thinking about readings. So most people go for like once a quarter. That's a good like update, once a quarter. But some people do it once a year. Some people have like a once a month touch in. It just depends on what's right for them. Every year in January, I do my predictions talk. And I say, this is what I think is going to happen in the year ahead for this year. 2025 has really been quite the year. And there's a lot of things I said in my talk in January in 2020 that have already started to come true. And clients are constantly, "Oh my God, Susan, I just saw this on the news. This is what you said in January." So the timing of how often you get a reading depends on what speaks to your heart. If you're going through a crisis and something that's upsetting for you, you want more readings more often. If life is kind of coasting along, you may be fine with once a year.
That'll make sense. Okay. So You talked about the business side of things, and I love when people bring this up. I've spoken to a doctor about this. I spoke to an author about this, probably several other different occupations. But the idea is interesting, where it's like you go to school or you set out to do a certain thing, and you learn that thing, whether it's writing or working in the medical field or whatever it is. But then you get out and it's like, oh, shoot, I don't know how to handle the business part of it. So my question for you, what did you do to supplement that lack of knowledge when it comes to the business side of things? Did you take community college courses or local university courses or courses online or podcasts, read books? How did you learn? How did you bridge that gap in your knowledge when it comes to the business side of things?
To some degree, I'm still working to bridge that gap, even all these years I've been doing this, because my technological skills are minimal. I won't say they're non-existent, but they're really small. And as society is moving faster, we have more and more going on. The tech side of any kind of business is just skyrocketing. And the ability for lots of people in lots of different industries to keep up is really hard. In the beginning, the way I supplemented that was with my friends. I had friends who are business owners. I had friends who understood more about that. And I was lucky because I would say, is this a good way to track my expenses? You know, my sister showed me how to set up an Excel spreadsheet so I could track this is what I need to earn. This is where my money's going. She showed me how to highlight certain expenses. Other people said, you might need to do this. You know, one of my clients who's not an astrologer, but she was a card reader, she said, start an email list. Your email list is gold. Start your email list immediately. So I had friends and family that helped me supplement that little by little as I needed. Now I'm doing a little more professionally. I do have a professional marketing person who helps me with some of my marketing, advertising, and things that I want to do. And she understands my tech challenges because technology and I do not get along. And if I touch it, if I look at it hard, it's going to stop working or do something strange. And she understands that. So she's very patient with me. So I'm lucky. I have found the right people without having to go back to school. Maybe I should, but so far this seems to have worked for me.
That's awesome. Okay. It's funny talking about you and technology. My brother is like that. One of my brothers is like that, where, at least when we were growing up, I remember teenagers, he just had awful luck with technology. He would, like you said, he would look at something and it would just stop working. And it's interesting where it's like, I'm kind of the opposite, where I had a part career in technology, and it got to the point where like I would walk in a room and people would be like to fix something. I'm there deliberately to fix a problem, and they come back with, well, it's working now. Like I didn't even touch it. I looked at it, like visually, I looked at it and it just started working. So I'm kind of the opposite of you in that way. So let's talk about education a little more broadly. Is there any specific education that would, aside from the business, any other education that would be beneficial for someone trying to enter this field? Do they need to take university courses? Do they need to there's plenty of resources online. How can someone get started doing this as a career?
Well, there's a difference between being an astrologer and being an astrologer reader. Because if you're an astrologer reader, you're reading for a client, you're reading for somebody else. But you could be a wonderful astrologer and understand astrology great and just never read for anybody else. So they're really two different skill sets. Anybody can learn astrology. You do not have to have any particular intuitive talent or anything to do this. You can get a book, you can look online, you can take some classes. That's how I learned. I went to a place that had some classes, I liked it. I took another course, and by then people were asking me to do their charts. So you can learn the astrology as quickly or slowly as you want. There's also Kepler College, which I think is in the Northwest. It's an astrology college where you can take all the classes to learn all about astrology, and you can take a test to get certified as an astrologer. So you can become an astrologer on your own terms and in your own pace. But if you want to become a reader, I would suggest taking psychology classes. I would suggest visiting a therapist or counselor because people are often asking you questions about wounds from their past, from their childhood, issues they're struggling with that an astrologer is in no way capable of handling. And a reading can be very personal and very private. So, luckily, I have professionals that I can refer them to because sometimes you're just doing the reading and a client will just blurt out, oh yeah, I was kidnapped when I was 3 years old and they got me back when I was five, but it's messed me up. And I'll start to, well, have you talked to somebody? Do you know somebody? Where are you on your healing journey? That's something that you really need to know is how to listen to people. When I first started reading, I thought my job was to keep telling them everything in their chart. And I would get annoyed when they would interrupt me with something because I'm supposed to give you all this information. And I learned that it really needs to be back and forth. It's not them sitting there quietly, it's the two of us interacting. So you need to listen to what they're saying and use that to help interpret the chart better. So any kind of listening skills, I think there's a group called the Red Boot Society that really teaches good communication skills. How do we speak in non-confrontational ways? Psychology classes, things that give you the opportunity to language what you want to say as precisely as possible and as tactfully as possible. You don't want to blurt something out to somebody. You have to ease into this and understand they may not be ready to hear certain things.
Oh,
So you have to be very tactful and you have to be very patient. It's not about you showing off your knowledge.
okay. So before you talked about getting your clients, and you said when you first started, you already had some clients because you had been doing this part-time. Um, from your
Yes.
experience as time has marched on, where's a good place to find new clients? Are you able to find people on social media that people are reaching out and looking? Do you go to just different conferences? Do different conferences attract different people that would be interested in having an astrology reading? If someone's just getting started, where's some good places they can start to look to find clients?
It's a good question. Before COVID, I did a lot of what I would call mind, body, spirit fairs. You pay a certain fee and you go and you set up your booth, and then people come to you and you charge a certain amount. And so you do mini readings, basically 15, 20 minutes, something like that. So I did a lot of those. Post COVID, I don't do as many. They're still out there, and you can look for different kinds of expos in your city, in your state. Sometimes I've known people who just put a circle in the southeast or the northeast, and they will go state to state, going to these different expos and mind, body, spirit conferences to promote themselves and get their name out there. I do a lot of free speaking. I do a lot of free talks as promotion. I live in North Carolina, and there are several what I call over 55 active adult communities. And one of them has a very strong mind, body, spirit group that meets once a week. And they have invited me to speak there so many times. I think people think I live there. And so I'll go in and I'll speak about a different topic, and the talk is totally free. But I will almost always get some people calling me for a reading. So it does bring in customers. The majority of the people that come to me have heard somebody say something good about me. Oh, so and so recommended you, or so and so had a great reading, and I thought I'd give you a call, kind of thing. And so the word of mouth is the best thing you can do, is that they are so happy with your reading, they go and they tell all their friends. That's the best thing you can do. But you can also, of course, have your own website. You can see about promoting your website. My website is exploreastrology.com. I'm on Facebook. You can be on Instagram. Now we have social media. So there's tons of different ways to promote yourself on social media. When I first started decades ago, we didn't have that. It was much slower. It was much slower going. But now I would say set up your website first thing. Get your email list going. Start to send out some sort of monthly newsletter. Like I send out a monthly newsletter of where the new moon is going to be and where the full moon is going to be. Totally free, just information to help people navigate kind of things. So don't be afraid of doing something for free as long as it promotes you and moves you forward and helps people see you and want to hear what you have to say.
This is all really, really good information. This reminds me of I was speaking with Dalen Huso, who started his own pool cleaning business in Arizona. And I love his story. He started out with like a net and a brush, I think, a net, a brush, and no money, I think is what he said. But one of the things he said was you lead with value. You give someone that value. You always start with that. Like, this is what I can give you. And that's exactly what you're saying. You kind of go to these opportunities. You have these opportunities where you go and you speak to people, and then you might get some people out of it. You might not, but you're providing that initial value. And I absolutely love that. One thing I wanted to mention too, you said you talked about the 15 to 20-minute mini readings. How long is a typical reading when you're doing your readings?
A typical reading for me is either 60 minutes or 90 minutes. And on my website, you can choose. Do you want a 60-minute reading? Do you want a 90-minute reading? Totally up to my client, whichever one they pick is fine with me. I remember one of my clients had chosen a 60-minute reading. And we were getting to the end of her reading. And she said, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe it's over." She said, "I couldn't believe you offered 90 minutes. Like, what could she talk about for 90 minutes? And now I just want you to keep talking." So, yeah, it's when you love what you do, you put everything into it. And even after all of these years, I did exactly what your pool guy did. I put as much value into it. I want to make it the best experience possible. I want them to walk away going, "Wow, that was great." And I want that for every single person that gets a reading. And so there are many people that book the hour and they contact me and email me, go, "Can I book the other 30 minutes? Because I wish we'd gone longer," kind of thing. Like they're still hungry for a little bit more. And that's fine. If you want a mini reading, mini readings are typically about 15, 20. I do not offer those on my website. You would have to book a full reading or a 90-minute reading. But fairs, like I do a little expo here about once a quarter, and they offer mini readings. So sometimes you don't need a whole hour. I would say just go to a Mind, Body, Spirit fair and book a mini reading for 15, 20 minutes. Sometimes that's all you need.
That's good information. Okay, so one thing I like to ask too, I like to get a sense of how difficult it is to break into a particular industry. So how saturated is this industry? If someone is looking to start, are they able to easily like find people and just get going? Are they going to be really competing with a lot of other astrology readers out there? What's that like from your perspective?
It's very different because I've been doing this for 40 years. And 40 years ago when I started, you have to remember there was no Teresa Caputo, there was no John Edward, there was no Sylvia Brown. It was very hidden. It was really looked down on. And if you wanted to study something in metaphysics, you had to know somebody who knew somebody, and you'd knock on a door 3 times and ask for Joe. Like this was not mainstream. And so there was very little competition. If you were doing this, like, wow, we want to work with you because there's so few people doing it. Now, especially in astrology, it's much more saturated. But that doesn't mean you can't still do this. But I would be very clear if you're going to do this, what are your expectations? Are you doing this for fun? And you don't really care if you get paid or not? Are you doing this for a little extra, spending money? Are you looking to make this a career? Because one of the first things I did when I first started out is I created a budget. How much money do I need every month to pay my bills? So think about how much you pay every month to pay your bills. That's how much I have to earn every month in astrology. And you have to ride those waves out. Some months you're so slammed, you can't get a breath. Next month, tanking, not doing as much. So yes, astrology is one of the areas where there are a lot of astrologers out there right now. So think about, what do you bring that's a little special or a little bit different? When I first started out, I would go into a time, and I still do this, I go into a time of prayer meditation for every client. And I started to see visions for my clients. And when I would be sitting down with them to do the reading, I would tell them, "This is the vision that I saw for you." And that's a little odd. That's a little different in terms of astrologers. I didn't know it at the time, but that's a little quirky, and I'm fine with that. That's my style. But what do you do? Do you concentrate on one area? Do you have a very different style of reading? Why would having a reading with you be different, special, or better than a reading with anybody else? Do you charge less so they can get good value? Do you have years of experience? Do you read in a different way? Think about what a reading is like with you from your client's point of view. And then I would start to promote that. I would start to talk about that. One of the downsides, or maybe the more difficult challenges about being a professional astrologer, is that even in this day and age in 2025, it's not a very respected profession. People make jokes about it or laugh about it, or they think only ignorant people do this. And you have to be willing to understand that. You have to be willing to accept this. I've had clients ask me, are you a Christian or are you a witch? There's still a lot of misinformation and ignorance out there about this. So you can't take that personal. Every time you do a reading for somebody, you are educating somebody and letting them know this is what I do. And it's not for the weak or the stupid or the, ignorant.
That is awesome information. I love that. One of the things I really like doing is identifying any barriers that people need to be aware of before they start to go down the road of a particular career. And the sooner they encounter those barriers, or the sooner they know about those barriers, the better off they're going to be because they can mitigate those as necessary. Susan, I am running a little short on time, but one thing I like to do whenever I'm speaking with one of my guests, I like to give them the opportunity to talk about a project they're working on, a cause they believe in, more about their business. So if there's something specific you'd like to talk about, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'd like to say on my website, and my website is www.exploreastrology.com. Every month, I put out free predictions for every sign. So if you know your sun sign, you can go to my website and click on predictions, and it will say for April, this is what's going on with Leo, or this is what's going on with Virgo. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to join anything. It is my way of giving back to the community. And you can always sign up on my website for my free newsletter. A reading can be a little expensive sometimes. I understand that. So I do as much as I can to share and give back to everybody else who may not have, the extra money to have a reading. I'll also say I'm on Facebook. You can look me up under Susan Reynolds or Explore Astrology with Susan Reynolds. Every day on Facebook, I will post where the moon is today, what the moon is doing today, and how you can best use that for your life today to make your life easier, to work with the energies that are happening today. So check all those out. Those ways that won't cost you anything, and you can definitely keep up with what's going on in the astrology world.
Susan, that is really, really good information. I'll make sure I get all of those links from you. They'll be on the website, in the show notes. They'll be all over the place. So when people are trying to find you, they can easily find you. It's been absolutely awesome having you on Time We Discuss and we learn what it's like to be an astrology reader.
Thanks for having me.